Hello, filmmakers. Welcome to our final event in the Filmmaker Series, the distribution. You finished your film. Now what? Welcome. I see everybody slowly trickling in. We apparently had an email glitch, so hopefully you're finding us. Welcome, Christopher Mark from Los Angeles. What do you do in the biz? If you're here, let us know what you do. What are you here excited to learn throughout the talk? You can put your questions in the box and we will try to answer them along the way. And we will definitely do a question and answer session at the end. If you're not familiar with Blackmagic, we are a collective of film and TV artists. We meet monthly, normally in person, but with COVID, it's been all on the internet, on panels. We talk about the business and craft and education events that focus on tech. Membership is free. So if you're not a member, join right now at blackmagiccollective.com. And you will get all the notices for when these lovely events go live. And we have a lot coming up in the new year, hopefully in person. Please, COVID, go. Let us be outside again. Blackmagic Collective Film Festival the submissions are closed, everybody. So mark your calendars for next month, November 14th. We're going to have our festival, sadly online, but it will be online. And to make it a little more fun, we have added an audience prize. So if you watch the films and you vote for your favorite film, you are registered to win a 6K Blackmagic Pocket Cam cinema camera. What? Got to join us. Again, that's November 15th. Dates will come out. You'll get something in the newsletter about it. And thanks to our sponsors, as always, Blackmagic Design and Sigma have kept us going this whole year. We're so grateful to them and for always supporting us indie filmmakers. And I am Jen Page. I am the executive director of Blackmagic Collective. I'm also a director. I've directed 6 feature films. I'm attached to my 7th and my 8th. I have directed tons of digital series, music videos, web, whatever it is out there, I've done it. And I am just with you, though, in the same boat. I still have not figured out distribution. It's still elusive. And I have a ton of questions for our awesome guests. Again, if you're just joining us, please put your questions in the comment sections of Facebook and YouTube, and we will get to them as we go. And we will go again at the end. We will ask them for you. Welcome, Trip from New York City. And Christopher's a DP director here, trying to figure out how to make this a career and not an expensive hobby. There's always that fine line, isn't there? Well, let's get into this. You finished your film, and now what? It's the question all of us are asking when we finish, especially now that a lot of us have gone through our film festivals virtually this year, and now we're just like feeling blah. Hopefully our guests can help us out. First up in our panel is Liz. You know what? I just realized we had a whole conversation about our director's last name, and I didn't ask you yours, so slap me when you get on, but I'm going to say Liz Manashil. She's a former Hulu PBS film critic. She's the co-host of the podcast of Making Movies is Hard, formerly managed Sundance Institute's creative distribution initiative, and currently in prep on her 3rd feature film as a writer, director, producer, among many other things like consulting with filmmakers, which you'll tell us what you do in a second. Thank you, Liz, for joining us. And we also have Glenn Reynolds, founder of Circus Road Films. He helps filmmakers navigate the world of distribution, including handling negotiations and sales on their behalf. Circus Road has participated in the sales of over 700 narrative and documentary feature films from huge festivals and brought by the biggest distributors in the world. And he's even co-produced 20 films to date. I feel just super lucky that we get to I get to just pick your brains until you're like, I have nothing left, Jen, go away. Thank you guys for being here. Liz, please, how do you say your last name?
Manashell, like man, it's a shell. Manashell.
Manashell. Great. So I want to just kind of jump right into our questions here. And the first one being, what can a filmmaker do just from the beginning to set themselves up for success? I know. I told you we're jumping right in. So let's say I have an indie film, which, we all do. I'm going to go, I haven't filmed yet. Are there things I can do in the beginning with either choosing my script or what I choose to do with cast? Are there things I can do before I even get to set to help me set myself up for success?
So, I mean, I don't know if you could tell by my floral outfit and my frizzy hair, but I'm a bit of a hippie. And I believe an artist makes work because they have to and because they're scratching an itch, and that itch can't be manufactured. It's something that comes from your soul. So I never really advocate for people to follow the marketplace or to make content in a certain genre, a certain story. It always ends up feeling false or phony, and that's not what art is for, right? But I would say I'm a huge advocate for building a relationship directly with your audience. So whether it's running an email newsletter or going on social media or having virtual screenings, or when we can come together in community and in person, meeting people face to face as often as possible who watch your work, I would say the first thing that you should do is have an open mind about connecting with your audience, communicating with your audience, and setting yourself up with like a web presence, social media, all these things, so that you can connect with them. And then when it comes to distribution, if you own your audience, you're not so reliant on distributors or marketers, because you can actually directly communicate with them about your work.
Glenn, do you share that same philosophy? Or
I do very much in the sense of like, I don't like, you shouldn't make a horror movie unless you're a horror movie lover and aficionado and have a deep ingrained story to tell that lends itself to a horror movie. Which I use horror movie because it seems to be, perennially the most commercial properties out there are horror films. And then you go down to the totem pole to thriller, comedy, drama. But I agree with Liz. It always should be a story from the heart, something you need to tell. With regard to story, I think it's most important to have a great story, to work on your story, to shop your story around with your friends and your colleagues to get to that place where it's you got to feel like it's bulletproof before you start raising funds, before you start shooting. Because when you look at most finished films that don't work, it always goes back to the story itself, and that's I think key.
So let's talk about indie filmmakers who they are making their story from their heart. They've written a script. It's pretty tight. They're going to set. They have no money. Is it better for them to spend their money on a star name for distribution purposes later, or is it better to spend their money on, say, camera and locations and things that are on screen as a whole?
I have an answer as a producer, not necessarily as a distributor. Do you want to take this one, Glenn, first, and then I can follow up with mine?
Sure. I mean, my knee jerk. Most independent filmmakers I know can't afford actors, so it's not even like really even a question, right? And we kind of live in a world where, at least regard to star value, you're either A-list or you're not. There's not really a B level that works to help monetize a film anymore. Just because we don't have the bargain bin at Walmart. We don't have like these kind of mid-level successes anymore. We either have kind of your grassroots, by your bootstraps, films that work, or you hit Sundance and you sell for a lot of money. And there's not a lot of in between. So yeah, I think that, it's also relative. Like if you're thinking, oh, I've got this little, this tiny little $3 million budget. Well, okay, you should get a star. You should get someone that, well, I should say you should be, go into the SAG pool of actors that mean something in Hollywood, whether they're A-list or not yet, if they're up and coming, in order to, build some insurance against, complete failure. Because at the end of the day, you're risking someone's $3 million. It's not just a pet project. So yeah, I guess it's a little relative to your budget.
I'm not as cool as Jen is. I have done 6 movies, and I think that you should be here instead of me, Jen. But I would love to hear about your films. But in my 2 features that I've written, directed, produced, and cast, we did get name talent. Ann Dowd, Emmy winner, was the lead of my second feature. Bobby Moynihan, Lauren Lapkus, Jeff Perry, Bella Lava. I mean, these may not be Brad Pitt, but these are, as I say, A-list of my heart. And I didn't have a casting director, and I made SAG ultra low budget features. I understand that they might not have a lot of meaning in terms of international territory sales. It's not like you could say, I got Bella Lavelle, give me $1 million. But it surely helped in terms of festivals and in terms of distribution. The only reason my first feature got distribution with this amazing company called The Orchard, which is no longer around, and they were good to me, was because someone was trolling IMDb at Lauren Lapkus's page. And so I think there's a way that you can attract name talent in a certain bracket at a lower budget. And it certainly has affected me. But I advocate for MFN a lot. And I don't know if it's inappropriate or if it's bad taste to kind of say that in a panel right now. But MFN is most favored nations. And it's a way of paying everyone the same rate so that there isn't kind of bitterness on set and everyone kind of feels like they're equal. So the way I've been able to, and you should probably interview my crewmates who maybe are resentful of MFN and maybe they hate that I'm doing this, but I usually pay cast and crew across the board the same rates. And that is the way I've been able to use my very small budgets to get the most out of a collaborative environment. And then there are cheats to some of those things you were talking about, Jen, like, or insinuating that you can use for marketing distribution. You could do labor swaps for a set photographer, or you can, labor swaps for anything, actually, for social media support, for trailers, for anything. So point being, there's a way to spread out the money and keep it equitable and kind, and also get name talent. I think there's a possibility there.
Welcome all the new filmmakers who are joining us. Amy and Kate and Bandit. You guys are all over the world. We love it. Thanks for joining us. So you mentioned festivals a few times. How important have festivals been? And Glenn, I know that you actually, I think you found me through a festival, but how important are festivals to you getting distribution? Or is it just a way to find filmmakers?
Well, for me, there's kind of two uses. One is I definitely find clients through festivals, but then I also quite often use festivals to help sell a movie. There being kind of two levels to that. There's the Sundance, South by, Tribeca level, well, pre-pandemic days where you could try to get people into a room and it was a better experience for watching a movie. And it was, a place where everybody, the perception is all the best films are there. And then there's just using the, smaller but not as well attended festivals that still have some cachet, like Seattle or Austin or whatnot, just to kind of build up the brand, create some awareness. I definitely help my filmmaker. I advocate films to festivals to try to help get them in. It's part of what I do. So we definitely think of that as part of the process. Now that we're, they're a little bit less effective now that they're virtual rather than in person. So it really kind of has opened my eyes to the fact that at the end of the day, the most important thing is the film itself to distributors. And do they dig the movie? Do they think it's commercial beyond all the trappings of what festival it played and whatnot? So it'll be interesting to see, come this new, Sunday, this new 2021, we go into Sundance and South by in the usual route that we go with films, how that all plays out and how that it'll be a lot different and how that affects the market. It's hard to say.
I think that's the hardest thing about even having this conversation we're having, because there's just so many unknowns. Our business is probably one of the most affected businesses probably in the country, I would say. We just don't know what's going to happen day to day. Have you, Liz, did you do a lot of festivals with your films?
I do. I'm kind of like a mid-tier festival queen, but I worked at Sundance for a few years, and so I've seen how the sausage is made to a degree, to the degree that they let me. And I found that as an emerging filmmaker, prior to making my first feature and making my first feature, it's really helpful. The festival world, it gives you this massive emotional boost. It reminds you that you put something out into the world that other people are enjoying. I know it's just a laurel, but those laurels have been really meaningful because it's reflective of the audience that I've reached out to. Completely agree with Glenn with what he's saying. Distribution is going to occur whether or not these festivals succeed or not. The market's going to occur, but the value of top tier festivals and their curation is still prevalent. It's still a real thing. Like if you get into Sundance, even if Sundance doesn't happen, you're still a Sundance branded film. And those mid-tier festivals do well in terms of aggregating critical acclaim and prestige and brand. Totally agree 100%. I would say it's those lower tier festivals, if they don't offer any sort of networking, ticket splits, if they don't tell you any audience information, all they do is offer a laurel and then profit from your film, you start to question, what am I really getting from that relationship? And so I think it's really important to be very selective in what you submit to so that you don't waste your hard-earned money or heart or soul in the festival world without getting anything back.
Kate Carson has a question for you guys. Has there been any replacement model for pre-sales since those have largely disappeared?
The short answer is no. The way people seem to be finding, it depends on what level of project you're talking about again. But if you're talking about a larger project that used to need a pre-sale, there are still pre-sales that happen. They mostly happen for A-list type films. And even then, your pre-sales are going to be 20%, 30% of your budget. You're still going to have to, get tax credits somewhere, raise some equity. So even a pre-sales deal, pre-sold film is going to need other types of financing to help it get off the ground. But
do you guys find that indie films actually ever I'm talking indie, not studio indie, like true indie, $250,000 to the $3 million range. Did they ever really have a pre-sale option? Like, I feel like that's for the big guys.
No, it's for the big guys now.
Yeah,
it really is.
Well, let's talk about distribution deals, because a lot of our filmmakers now, I know so many filmmakers who are right now like struggling with who they should go with the distributor, because I don't think people understand that distributors are not marketers. They're literally just putting your movie up in places. You are the marketer. So what is it that people should be looking for in a distribution deal? And what are the things they can negotiate? I would love anything you guys think of for the next, even this could be the whole rest of the conversation if we need to, but whatever you think of, like, let's get that out on the table to help them out.
Yeah. Liz, do you want to go or you want me to go?
Yeah, my whole business model, I became a consultant because I was seeing too many filmmakers getting taken advantage of. And I've written a lot of articles about this at Sundance, and I want to hold the fire to the feet of bad distributors, really. And I would say what's important, you should ask yourself what's more important, right? Is it associating yourself with a powerful brand, even if it comes at a cost of like creative accounting? Is it, getting to the most amount of eyeballs or making the most amount of cultural impact as you can? But ultimately, I always lie on the side of creative distribution, retaining some rights, splitting them amongst various different partners, working with transparent distributors who provide regular quarterly reporting to you unasked for. Sorry?
Do those exist?
They do. They do exist. Ones that answer your emails, that allow you to negotiate term lengths that are reasonable. Because if you don't know what's happening next month in terms of distribution, why should you sign a 15-year deal with anyone? So in terms of things that you can negotiate, I mean, I'm sure Glenn and I could go into it, and maybe we will. But for me, it's more important to get in bed with an honest, upstanding company and kind of contribute to that culture rather than sell a little bit of my soul to the old world of distribution, which really left filmmakers out of the conversation the majority of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. There are still distributors that do some marketing too. There's different levels of that. So if, IFC takes on your film and they're going to be doing drive-in, theatricals, there's going to be marketing. Yeah. But yes, when you get down to the straight to digital space, without the theatrical component of any kind, you do see some distributors still doing Facebook ads, Instagram ads, that kind of stuff, and sometimes doing some advertising within the cable VOD space. And there are those distributors to avoid that really aren't doing anything but posting on their own website and calling that social media marketing and then charging off to some social media manager who did nothing. So, there definitely is, people who truly market and people who don't market and pretend to market. Beyond the marketing, then it's a matter of looking at the companies and where they stack up in terms of how they've done with their films in the past, and what percentage of their, because so some companies, it's fairly easy to get to, Google Play, iTunes, Amazon. We can all do that through an aggregator. What's a little harder is the cable VOD space of Dish, DirecTV, in demand. There are some films that will work in that space and some films that won't. It has to do with genre, name value, poster, lots of things. And I found that some aggregators are not as good as distributors. Some distributors at getting to that space, even though they say, hey, we'll try and put it on Dish. There's a failure rate there that's a lot higher than with distributors, because it's a pitch at the end of the day to get it there. The next part of that is their ability to sell SVOD, subscription video on demand, or TV rights, 6 months to a year after that they started transactional. And if you dive into looking at these distributors and how many of their films do show up on Showtime or Netflix later on, because that can be a significant portion of the revenue. There are some distributors that maybe bat like 1 out of 3 films getting that kind of sale, and there are companies that never make that sale, or about 1 out of 20. And so that's an important part to try to analyze when you're looking at that as well.
I want to backtrack us a little bit, because we know these terms, but not everybody might. So, and also the windowing you would do. So the first thing up, he says TVOD, meaning transactional video on demand, meaning people pay for your film, and that's rentals as well. Yes. So it's like buying,
it's rental or buying your individual.
You're paying film. Money.
Right.
Then the next tier that it's weird, because then people tend to go to SVOD streaming, and then they tend to go to AVOD advertising, which I find backwards, but is that the way you guys?
It depends again on the level of the film and the distributor, because the reason to go to SVOD next is because it's a license fee payment, right? And usually the requirements of an SVOD agreement, SVOD is going to be like Netflix, right, or a Hulu, or a Showtime, which is TV. And usually those agreements don't allow you to be on an AVOD site at the same time, and that's why you can't just go to both. So you go to SVOD and TV and make that sale. You have a window there. It's either exclusive or non-exclusive. And then a couple years later, then you go to AVOD.
So before we get to AVOD, the SVOD phase, if you are, say you're selling to someone like Netflix is every filmmaker's big dream. Let's hold off on that for a second. Yeah. Let's talk like Showtime. What kind of money are filmmakers going to get if Showtime buys them on average?
It's a range. Probably on the low end, it's 20, 25 grand. It can get up to 6 figures if they think it's something special and is coming through the right distributor. But probably if you're talking about like maybe the median, it's probably low 5 figures.
I mean, that tends to be a lot of money for some indie filmmakers who are like, weren't going to have anything. So that's a great thing to know. And it's also cool because Liz, you do this too, I think, right? But Glenn, you actually can help filmmakers walk into those doors and sell their film to these people. Because the next question we have, which I'm gonna get to your question in a second, Ruben, but I want to go on really quick to, so AVOD advertising, that's things like Tubi, Crackle, where basically I can watch your movie for free, but I have to watch ads, and the ads, how do filmmakers get paid? Like what percentage of that are they getting? Do you guys know? Yeah,
it's a range. It probably tops out at about 15 cents per view. In fact, like Amazon Prime subscription pays like AVOD. So if you understand, like if you watch 100 minutes of a movie on Amazon Prime subscription, they're paying out anywhere from 1 to 12 cents for every 100 minutes viewed. And the more it's viewed, the higher it goes. 12 cents. It's painful, and it's why you don't just go right to Amazon. Well, as long as we still have transactional working. And that's debatable how long transactional is still going to be a thing to me. I think in a couple of years, we're probably going to be in an AVOD and subscription model only. But but at least for now, there's a little window to do that transactional, get a higher price point, then make that TV sale. And then the reason you do AVOD is because everything else is gone, right? No one's, you're old, you're an old movie if you're 6 months old now, right? You get that TV window, you don't, and you might as well get to AVOD because it's an increasingly bigger piece of the pie. And even though it's painful to see it at 10 cents or 15 cents per view, there's so many people watching there that it can, especially on Amazon Prime, it can add up to a lot of money. And there are some examples of films that have almost solely made all their money through AVOD, but they were just the right kind of film for a Tubi,
Right.
the right audience. They found their audience there and made some money.
Let's talk self-distribution versus traditional. So a lot of this we've been talking about is more traditional. We go to a distributor, they do it. And then self-distribution, you used the word aggregator earlier, which if you don't know, if you're watching, you know what an aggregator is. It's basically a website that you tend to pay them up front, one fee. They put it on all these sites that a distributor would put it on for, but ultimately you could make more money because maybe you pay $1,500, but you get all the profit from those other sites. Normally, if a distributor puts it on all those sites, you get a percentage of whatever happens minus all of their fees that could be ridiculous. Which is why I recommend you guys talking to someone like Liz or Glenn before you go to distributors and not doing it yourself, which is getting us into Ruben's question, because they know the language and they know what rights you can keep and they know what they can negotiate, and you don't get, super screwed over. And like you said, suddenly they own your film for 15 years and for what? So Ruben asks, should filmmakers of an indie film reach out to distributors proactively? And when is the best time to do that? After a festival premiere? ?
I wrote an article for Sundance a few years ago where I interviewed 25 distributors and I asked them what they're looking for, how to approach them, where they find their content, yada, yada, yada. I'm writing a sequel right now. I'm really kind of excited about it. A lot of distributors will not take unsolicited submissions. And a few of them will, said to me in confidence that they have an email address on their website. And even though they said they don't take unsolicited submissions, they will check the email box and they will scan through to see if there's anything of note. Most of them said that they take recommendations from their former clients or, recommendations from lobbyists, like amazing advocates for the film, sales agents, lovely individuals in this industry. The reason I'm speaking with any sort of hesitant tone is that's what they're telling us. And I do think that's probably the most successful way to get their attention. But and not to get on a soapbox, but I think I'm about to, too very often the power's been out of our hands as artists. And why not? Why not reach out to them? Why not advocate for yourself? If not many people get the opportunity to work with someone like Glenn Reynolds or a really good sales agent like Glenn Reynolds. So we have to be our own advocate. And if you could put together a respectful pitch that explains why your film should be of note to them, and you don't ping them every 3 days, and you really market yourself well and prove that you have an audience for your content, I encourage people to break down those doors of division. I do say again, with a little bit of a caveat, it might not be the most effective route. We're still entrenched in this kind of like elitist structure of us versus them. I'm just encouraging people to break down those walls if they have the resources.
And then to Ruben's question, when is the best time? Is it as soon as your movie's done? Do you wait till you try to get some accolades? Like, when do you think is the best time?
From my perspective, it really depends on who's in your team. If you have an asset, if you have a film that has either a massive audience already aggregated or a name star or whatever it is that kind of sets your film apart and makes it look like an incredibly in-demand product, you don't necessarily need to wait until you have the validation of the film festival world. But if your film doesn't have those legs yet and you want to see what the marketplace values it as, I'd wait a little bit.
Glenn, what are your thoughts on this whole?
Yeah, so I think definitely, I don't think there's any issue in reaching out to anybody and trying to knock down the door. A couple of things to keep in mind, though, are there's a lot of bad distributors out there, and even some with good brands. And so you need to do your due diligence and talk to other filmmakers and hear what other people's experiences have been. So when you get an offer from someone and you jump up and down, but you don't know, you need to know their history. You need to know what proper deal terms are. There's a lot of things that go into making a decision to go in with the distributor. You need to be careful about. It needs to be a lot of self-education before you knock on those doors, I think.
Which is why I always recommend that someone, whether it's a sales agent or just somebody that you trust, like that has gone through it, I always recommend filmmakers that
it's not a bad idea,
educate
actually.
yourself.
Even if you might go do it yourself, you might knock on the door of sales agents and producer reps first to get their take and get that feedback. That can be a bit of an education before you go and knock on the distributor doors yourself. And most producer reps and sales agents I know are maybe a little bit more open to watching independent projects than distributors are. And I think with regard to festivals, one other thing I'll say though is, like, when you do your due diligence and you talk to a lot of filmmakers about distributors, you're going to hear a lot of hate because most filmmakers don't like their distributors because most films don't work, and most film, it's just the reality of the marketplace. And most filmmakers end up blaming their distributor, whether it was really the distributor's fault or not. Quite often it is, but also quite often it isn't. So with those two caveats, I think it's worth knocking down those doors. On festivals, like Liz said, it kind of depends on what kind of film you have. If you have a film that deserves to be in Sundance and South by, you should hold on to it and use the leverage of getting in something like that to sell your film. If you have a film that's really not a festival movie, some horror films, some certain kinds of documentaries aren't really even some people independently make very straight to TV kind of fare. And if it plays like an old Lifetime movie or something like that, it still might have commercial value, but it may not be right for the Seattle Film Festival. So I think it does definitely, whether you go to a festival or not, just kind of depends on what kind of film you have.
So our Oz behind the curtain, John Parento, my co-producer on all things Blackmagic Collective, is asking a great question. Basically, it boils down to, I know people who do this. I know people who their whole thing is like, they make a film, whether it's like a horror film or a genre comedy, and they get it out there, they get it to Redbox, they make some money, they do it again. Are you valued by a distributor if they see that you keep making a movie and it keeps making a little money, or do they see it, is it wiped down and less value you as a producer? Like, what are your thoughts on all that?
I mean, I think if you're in that lucky position of cranking out things that are working and selling, I don't see how that's a negative to a distributor at all. I think they're still probably mostly analyzing the film in front of them, and maybe a little bit how you supported the film to help it make it money. That's going to bring some value there too. Most of these distributors are not also production companies, so they're not looking to like fund the next one most of the time. So if we lived in that world, it'd probably be even more interesting. But yeah, I don't think there's a downside to having successful films to distributors at all.
Welcome all the new filmmakers joining us. Katrina from the OC and Ruben, thank you for your awesome question. If you're on here and you have questions burning, please put them in your Facebook or YouTube chat box, wherever you are at, your comment box, and we will get to it right away. I would like to talk about the big, the god to indie filmmakers, and that is Netflix. Do we know what's going? They change what they're doing every 6 months or so. Do we know what's going on now? Like, are they buying filmmakers' films? Are they doing only original content? What do we know?
So, Liz, you want me to go? You want to go?
I want to jump in and answer the last question, and then I can segue to you if that's okay. Yeah. I just want to say that I think the question underneath John's question also is relationship building. So there's something about having a track record, sure, but ultimately people are going to evaluate the project for what it is. But if you're working with a distributor and you have a positive relationship and you're working in mutual respect, I think that goes a long way. And I know it sounds like kind of a hippy-dippy answer as per usual, but ultimately keeping up appearances and having positive communication with these business partners, people that you're getting into bed with, is incredibly important. In terms of Netflix, from my vantage point, I've heard whispers and rumors all the time, and I think it's the pipe dreams of indie filmmakers that Netflix is going to come around and start licensing our content again. I'm not seeing that. I'm still seeing that they're on the path of original content. It is the smarter business model, but we're in another iteration of the SVOD bubble, right? Where there's Peacock and there's HBO Max and there's more and more SVODs popping up. So there is more opportunity for individual content outside of a output deal to be licensed. But I'm not seeing it happen at Netflix. There are some distributors that still seem to have a straight pathway to Netflix, but I wouldn't say that it's very often. I would say it's more on the unique side.
Yeah, so the originals division will look at films to see if, okay, we'll turn this into an original thing, but it's extremely rare. It is more likely to get you're more likely to get a Netflix deal through a distributor that then goes to, does all the transactional first and then tries to sell it later. And I've had a few films over the last couple of years that have gotten that deal, and it adds a significant amount of revenue. But it still isn't quite the same as being a Netflix pickup from Sundance or a Netflix original, right? Like that it gets front page placement on Netflix. The other deal, you can say I'm on Netflix, but it doesn't quite create the same kind of awareness.
Do we know? So what about these? We talked a little bit about other streamers, but like Hulu is got a little clout behind if you get a Hulu, if you're on Hulu. What is the best way? Is it really the best way to get to these streamers is through a distributor, or is it through a sales agent? Like how do you best get your stuff on these bigger platforms?
Those pitches coming from aggregators, like Glenn was saying earlier, are really zero chance. I mean, I think I heard a few success stories maybe 3 years ago of things coming from distributor and being accepted by a prominent SVOD, but obviously distributor's gone, and it still continues to be a volume industry in aggregation. But I've heard of stories from successful sales agents directly outside of distributors getting those deals. But I would love to hear what Glenn has to say.
Yeah, no, I still present films to those guys, and I get turned down a lot. But I just sold a film to Showtime last month, so they're still buying. But yeah, I've had more films though go the route of getting a distributor, and then that distributor placing it with them, 6 months later, and that's definitely still happening.
So Zachy has a question about transparency. I'm going to pop it up on the screen so we can all read it. But what if your distributor keeps on telling you that you can't produce reports because the platforms haven't given them reports due to COVID? Should you believe them?
No.
But wait, the follow-up question for Zachy, I think, is how new is Zachy's release, right? Because there is a delay in terms of like Google Play and iTunes. Like they send estimates, but they may not be able to do the actual reporting for quite a few months. I feel, and Glenn,
some platforms report to the distributors monthly, and some every 2 months. And then they take all that information and they store it, and then usually you're reported to on a quarterly basis. So if your agreement, most agreements are on quarterly basis. So most likely you're not really due to get anything, and most distributors just don't care about giving you real-time results, even though it would be nice. There are a couple of there are some caveats to that, but most distributors just will they just don't want to deal until they have to in terms of reporting.
And if Zaki, if you wanted to share the name of that distributor, I don't think people would be upset about hearing it.
Or if you do have a follow up to that, Zaki, please, by all means. Welcome, Paula, actor, producer, director in LA. And she says she's known Glenn for years, loving the beard, and adores Blackmagic. So when it comes to rights to your film, it seemed for me, and Glenn knows this because I had a whole back and forth about it, but like I have a hard time giving up my rights to say Amazon when I know I can put it up myself. And the distributor puts it up and they get the money and I don't see any money. What rights can I retain, if any, if I go with the distributor? Can I keep my website rights and sell things on my website? Like, what can I keep?
I just went through this, so I can inform a little bit, and I'm sure Glenn is an expert in this vein, of course. I kept airline rights. I kept theatrical. I kept semi-theatrical. This is my latest feature that was just released in January. I approached an airline aggregator myself because that sounded fun. And I've just been put on Air Force One and made a deal to merchant ships. I wasn't relying on my traditional distributor to do that. I booked my own theatrical run before COVID happened by just emailing art house theaters and saying, hey, would you play my movie? Here's a one sheet and a trailer. And I came from Impact Distribution, so I have done some semi-theatrical events. That being said, my distributor is a unique one. I work with Giant Pictures, and Glenn probably knows them well. And they're unique in that they're very flexible. I think that some distributors, you may approach them and they might not want theatrical. It might be a very easy thing for them to give up. And we're in a pandemic, so they might not be interested in airlines either, right? Because they're not doing so well. But if a distributor is not willing to be flexible with you, or they're not able to prove why they need those rights and how they're going to exploit them to the best of their ability, then you may not want to work with that distributor. You want to work with someone who's flexible and creative.
Transparent. And Zaki says she's had no reports since January from her distributor Dauntless.
I'm writing Dauntless down.
Yeah. I just wrote everything you said. I'm taking notes, guys. See, filmmakers, I'm literally taking notes. This is such great stuff. You should be. I hope you're taking notes. Glenn, did you want to add on to?
Sure. I find that within I agree with everything Liz said about the rights she talked about. What's really hard what would be lovely to carve up would be to take, certain digital rights to withhold, because there are ways you can get to some of these platforms yourself. But it's like particularly cable, it's hard to get the cable VOD. It's hard to make that SVOD sale. Amazon, you could, everybody can go on Amazon and do it themselves. There's a couple of, there's places like Giant, there's Film Hub, there's, ways to get to the AVOD space that's less encumbered with costs than a distributor would be. But it's hard to get traditional distributors to carve up those rights. They don't want to do Google Play only and give you Amazon. They want to be full on board. And there's plenty, like if your film is not going to work for them, there's another film coming around the corner is kind of right. The attitude,
Can we talk about deliverables? Now I know this, it's hard to get specific because I know every film has different things, but the reason I want to talk about deliverables is because I don't think people understand that they need to be thinking about this before they even go to set. Can we go through some of the things that pop up that maybe filmmakers tend to forget they need to do or don't think about?
I mean, the big one I assume we were alluding to is photography, right? Is not necessarily behind the scenes imagery, but choreograph stills with your cast.
I am dealing with this right now, literally trying to pull frames from the movie because one actor is in one coast and the other actor is in another country and we ain't getting them back, people. You've got to think about that ahead of time, your movie poster. And and I would say just getting a bunch of people, like getting your names and your leads in solos in front of like a white wall or something you could just do different poses and later it can be decided how it's going to be put together.
We did it, in front of a seamless on set. My producers almost plotzed because we were getting behind, but It was like one producer was against another. We wanted to get more pages in the day. The other one was like, what about marketing and distribution? Yes, I would say that's really important. I'm trying to think of what you would be thinking about on set specifically, but just making sure, and I'm the last person to do this, so this is me talking the talk but not walking the walk, but making sure you have enough money to pay for these deliverables to be created. You know, closed caption files, subtitles. If you're outsourcing a trailer, you know, the cost for trailer edit, the cost for a really beautiful poster, the entire release could be based off of a really good image, a thumbnail of your poster. So making sure you have the funds set aside for those kind of things. But yeah, advocate for making sure your cast is on set in those photographs.
I think there's probably things that came up too for us, like suddenly the sound, like I mean, obviously hopefully you're thinking about post-production sound and ADR, but I feel like there's other things that just seem to happen when you need to deliver and you don't have those things. It's insane. And I feel like that's something that every filmmaker needs to think about for your distribution from beginning, from day one. It needs to be on your to-do list. Even if it's after the film is done, it needs to be in your budget, like she said. And Kate says, blurg deliverables. Glenn, have you ever had any problems come up where filmmakers just didn't have what they needed to have to, I mean, even paperwork, like you've got to have paperwork for everybody.
Yeah. I mean, that's quite often the whole is either, you know, chain of title between writers agreements or production agreements, actor agreements, location agreements. You know, don't have someone sing a song in the movie that you didn't license certain rights for. Yeah, music licensing is something I find that like a lot of people struggle with at the end of the day, which, you know, a lot of people hang on to those cues and think I got to have them, and then they end up having to give them up because they don't have the budget for it.
Or they get festival rights instead of all rights. It drives me absolutely crazy. Don't just get festival rights for the music.
And some of them will, some of the companies will price you out and not really be reasonable with giving you all rights, and so you can't do it. And you just have to let it go, you know, because if you get just festival rights, you know, you're never going to get a price that's fair for all rights later. It's totally true.
One of the reasons I will not let my editor put in temp music. Like, and I remember when I got the cut back after for the assistant editor, and I just didn't even listen to what she put. I literally went in and deleted it all. And I told her before, and I said, don't waste your time putting music in. I'm going to delete it. And I did as soon as it came back, because I don't want to get attached to anything. Also, I'm a snob about music and where it goes. So, you know, I'll be the one to deal with it. But yeah, I think the delivers there's as far as titles and stuff too, guys, if you're out doing you're at the point where you are getting subtitles and closed captions, I highly recommend rev.com, rev.com. I don't know where you guys went, but from Rev was a dream. Like, we sent them our movie and we told them what we needed, and it was super cheap and fast. Everybody else is so expensive, and they're not paying me for this. Maybe I should make that. Rev need to sponsor us. But I know it's something that everybody deals with, and they don't know where to go. And I see that question pop up in groups all the time.
Do they do dialogue lists by any chance?
I don't know.
You know, that's another thing that some distributors want that should cost less than it does. So if anybody has any good dialogue, I have a couple of places I send people, but they're not cheap.
And when you say a dialogue list, is that basically just every line in the movie? Set
the time code. Yeah, basically. And it seems like, hey, I can just do it myself, but it's a really intensive thing to do. You really can't.
I feel like they must do that, because I mean, even when you get back your SRT files or whatever you need, you always have the actual document. So I've
just submitted a script, and they requested an EDL, right? That's the acronym, I think. But then ultimately I would say I don't have it, and submitted the script, and I got away.
Right.
I skated away somehow.
Oh, with the distributor, you were able to give them a script. Oh, that's cool. That's good. Yeah.
Also, so one other cost to think about later on is insurance. Is something that some distributors will waive it, some will pretend to pay for it and recoup it. But a lot of, especially if you go to a certain level of distributor and above, especially if you get a deal with Netflix, you have to have E&O. They have too many lawyers for you not to have E&O. And that generally, if you get a decent rate, should be around $2,500 On top of that, you usually need like a title and copyright report. That's usually around $700-800 too.
Making movies is expensive, y'all. Mm-hmm. And E&O means errors and omissions. If you're not familiar with that term, and Filmmakers, we have a few minutes left. So if you have questions, get them in the box now. I want to try to answer all of your questions. I know a lot of you have gone to film festivals and had a really rough year because it's been virtual. And what happened too, and I don't know, Liz and Glenn, how much you've heard of this, but like I even have a friend of mine she was South by Southwest, and before the festival, her phone's ringing off the hook. And then the minute it went virtual, the phone stopped ringing. And I'm like, but it's still the same film. But I think distributors want to be part of that party. They want to go and be there. So it's a struggle for filmmakers to find good distribution.
Yeah, I don't know if they want to go there, but it does do something to them when they are there, right? It just is an atmosphere. I think they would all be fine not traveling to Sundance, and I mean maybe South by. There's great barbecue and music, right? So it's maybe a little bit more fun to some of these guys, but a lot of them are just worn out by Sundance. And I think Sundance this year is going to do some screenings in LA and New York and some other places. So it'll be interesting to see if that takes hold or what that seems like. But yeah, it's I had a film that was in South by Southwest this year, and it definitely took the piss out of everything. It's definitely a whole different strategy when you don't have that kind of venue to play the film.
Yeah, but it's pretty heartbreaking.
The playing field is leveled, right? We're all suffering together. That's right. That's right. I do think, though there's only been a few articles and data that's come back about it, virtual events are an opportunity. Virtual screenings, virtual theatrical. And this is like an opportunity for filmmakers to communicate directly with festivals and saying, how much of the ticket price am I going to get if you're going to use my film? Are you going to geo-block this? How available is this going to be?
So here's what's happening, though, because we just went through this. And both of the festivals, which were decent festivals and very filmmaker-centric festivals, were like, we're sorry, we cannot split ticket money. Because I straight up asked. I was like, can you split the ticket money with us? They're like, we can't. And I get it. They think they have all these overhead, whatever they think they have. We're like, well, can we get the email addresses of the people who watched our films? So we can at least ask them to go to Amazon later. We can't do that. Like, they literally gave us nothing. So at the end of the day, we were grateful to be part of the festivals, and they were the festivals that if they were in person, we would have loved it and been there and had the best time. But we didn't tell anybody we were screening until the screening was over because we didn't want to lose thousands of dollars. Sure. We need our audience to go to Amazon that one time we go out. And so it's been kind of a bummer.
And it's an iterative process, right? So it's like as filmmakers start to remind festivals what we need and what we want, hopefully they'll evolve to making ticket buyers sign consent agreements about their email addresses, right? I understand it's a massive legal haul over to change those things, but I'm sorry that you had that bad experience too.
But I think a lot of filmmakers are, so I appreciate your guys' time here. We have one last question from our Oz, John. He says, Glenn, are there films that catch your eye, make you want to make a deal with a filmmaker? Are there certain things that you see? Is it, they have a named talent? Is it, this film is good? Like, are you just like, I'll help anybody because I want to help everybody?
There's a little of that. I mean, I definitely rep some films because I like the filmmaker more than the movie. Because I think generally, everybody needs some help. But I love all kinds of movies. I love documentaries. I love comedies. I've been a film freak since I was a kid, and that's why I'm in this mostly. And it's not, it's not for me about name value. I mean, that's partly where I swim, though. I don't, maybe 1 out of 20 films that I sell has, a decent sized name. So I'm pretty used not to having names and mostly working off of, great concepts, great marketing, and good little movies. So no, I am pretty open.
I love it. And Liz, right now, how are you? You said you're consulting. How are you helping filmmakers in your new?
Similar to this panel, I'm an educational resource. I am an advocate for them. I connect them to distributors. I look at offers and I advise on whether they'd be good ones and whether they should run screaming. And I worked for Peter Broderick for 3 years. I managed the Sundance Creative Distribution Initiative, and then I worked in impact distribution for a year. So I have a pretty wide array of knowledge in terms of how to release a film and build an audience.
Well, you guys have both been fantastic. And so there's so much knowledge and care that comes from you. I love it. And as you filmmakers can see, they've actually put their email addresses up. Who does that? So email them with your, when you have your film, and see if you're a fit to work together and how they can help you. I will let you guys go with a very big thank you. And but those of you still here with us, filmmakers who are still here, we have the September film pick of the month. So stick around. It's super cute. Next week, we have our final art tech series of the year. It's with director and stunt coordinator he's done huge films, the stunt coordinator, Ben Hernandez-Bray. So stick around for that. Next week, same time, same channel, right here, Thursday, 1 p.m. Next month, November 14th, mark your calendars. It's our film festival that, yes, will be online, but it's going to be our final event of the year. We're going to have a nice panel for you. We're going to play all the films that are the finalists. And for you audience, if you vote, you'll be eligible to win a 6K camera. So you've got to show up. You've got to watch these great films that filmmakers have put their heart into and be a part of that whole conversation. I'm also trying to find ways for people to network. This online thing is just taking the fun out of film festivals. Thank you again to our sponsors, Blackmagic Design and Sigma. You guys are awesome. We love you dearly. Thank you again to our audience who've watched us, who've stuck around with us all year through this pandemic and have been here with me monthly to ask your questions and be active. I really appreciate it. So here we go. Our 5-minute film is our September pick of the month, and it's also now a semifinalist in the Blackmagic Collective Film Festival. And I'm going to let Jake, the filmmaker, introduce himself and his film. And you guys are great. I will see you around here, hopefully soon. Outside, maybe.
Hello, my name is Jake Rasmussen. I'm a filmmaker based in Brooklyn and the creator of Napchat. So for 1 month, I recorded myself sleep talking, and I took all of those sound bites and wrote a script based on what I said in my sleep. So what you're about to hear is 100% real. It's kind of insane. So I'm so honored to be a part of this film festival, and I got to go.
Jake sleep talks a lot.
Oh, I'm enjoying it.
We've recorded these nighttime ramblings and turned them into a script.
Oh, I'm enjoying it.
Hey, I'm just... Great. Why didn't we just go to brunch?
2-hour wait. Like, There's a 2-hour wait. Like, no.
Well, it's cool. I like bars. Even empty bars at 11 o'clock. It's nice to finally meet you. I'm sorry that our Skype date didn't work out.
My username for Skype is usernhub, and I'm like, I don't want to use usernhub. So I took it back to change it, and it was like, sorry, you're stuck with those.
What do you do again?
I'm gonna check. You know what I mean? See what I'm saying?
I don't think I know what a shack is.
Oh, you get the surfboard down, but it's a little too dark.
Ow.
Is it bad? Oh, your right shoulder or left shoulder?
My right shoulder.
Uh-oh.
It's okay. I have Advil. I'll just...
I'm so mad. I'm so sorry. I might have ruined something. Can I steal a water bottle? Or is that for something else?
Yeah.
Is there a weed in it? How could I get another thing on me? Ryan? Sorry.
You hear that song? This is that song, Trudy's Playhouse.
Trudy's Playhouse is sick.
Yeah. I don't know any of the words, but I love it.
Dun, dun, dun. Okay. So, what do you guys think? Longer, faster, stronger? Those 4 words.
Longer. Faster.
Are we speakers blocking the speakers blocking the peepers?
Oh, yeah, they're definitely blocking the peepers. You know what?
Hey, can we turn up the seekers? Thank you.
I can't believe you know what Trudy's Playhouse is. And you're a Sheck? You're a really cool guy. I don't know what you're doing later, but do you want to maybe come over?
I don't know, like, what is the context? Like, was that there? Like... Alright, cool. So, what did I tell? This is perfect. What? This is perfect. Like, how much else to here? This is perfect. How do you live here? Seriously. Like, is it a lot of money? Hello? Does anybody hear me? I guess no one can hear me. It's a little weird. Or is he alone? Oh my God, I just realized that. Look at this production.
Longer. Faster. Stronger. Those 4 words. Longer. So, what do you guys think? Longer.